Shabbat Shalom. Just recently, I found myself thinking about the trips we made to Prague with our Bar and Bat Mitzvah program here in the synagogue. We have done it twice now, and each time we have visited the Pinkas synagogue in Prague. And the Pinkas synagogue in Prague is unlike any other. The walls of the synagogue are covered with almost 78,000 handwritten names. Names of the Czechoslovak Jews who perished in the Shoah. So you enter the synagogue and the walls are covered by the names, and the names really climb from down to the ceiling, from left to right. Everything is covered in red and in black letters. No commentary, no images, no biographies, just name. And every time I stand there, because I'm from Prague, so I go there sometimes. Every time I stand there, I find this both humbling and also terrifying. I often feel this deep sense of gratitude that I can see those names and bear witness to their memory. But also I feel unsettled because I see the names, but not the faces. I don't know the stories behind those names. And I am imagining that behind each and every name, there was a person with dreams and disappointments, with childhood and perhaps a great love, or a great sense of humor, or a quiet soul. So much remains untold. And this week's Torah portion, Pinchas, strangely echoes this feeling, because it too is filled with names. In fact, it preserved this whole genealogy, which is quite common in the Torah. We have some genealogies, but there is something unusual in this one, because this time we hear names of women. And names of women are quite often erased or simply not recorded. And even if we think about these last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we have read the Torah portions, and these were their names: Korach, Balak, Pinchas. These are male names. None of them were called Cosbi, Sarah bat Asher, or the daughters of Zelophehad. Yet these women are in those Torah portions, in the story. But we have to look for them. Right at the beginning of this week's Torah portion of Pinchas, we are told the name of Cosbi bat Tzur. She is a Midianite woman, she's not an Israelite, and she was actually killed in the last week's Torah portion in a moment of holy rage by a man called Pinchas. Last week she was nameless. Only this week, in this week's Torah portion, we are learning her name, Cosbi bat Tzur. At least the name. The story remains mostly untold. So for a brief moment, this week's Torah portion, Pinchas, is this monument, counter-monument to silence. Like the Pinchas synagogue that records all those names, this Torah portion, in a way, also records all these names. And we have just heard this so beautifully by you, Constance, in your words and in your chanting of the Torah, about the 5 daughters of Zelophehad: Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirza. 5 women. Their father has died, and he had no sons. So these five women come forward and they say to Moses, "Why should our father's name be lost just because he had no sons? Give us a possession among our father's kin." And this is an extraordinary moment. Moses brings this case before God. He doesn't decide himself. And then God says, "Ken benot Zelophehad dovrot." The daughters of Zelophehad speak rightly. So their petition is granted. And the law is changed not only for them, but also for all women who come after them. So we can celebrate, right? Great feminist achievement. The women got their land, and we should, because they really stood in front of Moses, Eleazar the priest, the whole congregation. They spoke, they were heard, and the law was changed in their favor. But we also need to think about how they presented their case. They didn't say, we are worthy women in our own right. They say, let us inherit so that our father's name will not vanish. So the Torah does not record them claiming the land as women of their own right, only as daughters of a man whose name deserves to be remembered. The name of their deceased father is more important than their individual contributions as women. And this tension is real. The daughters of Zelophehad are strong, but they still have to operate within a framework that does not fully see them as equal in the Asian society. And if we keep reading the Torah portion, there is yet another woman, and we could miss her entirely. Her name is Sarah bat Asher. She's the daughter of Asher. Sarah is her name. And the Torah doesn't give us anything else, just the name, Sarah bat Asher, one daughter of 12 sons of Jacob. So she is a granddaughter of Jacob. And one of the modern commentators in the JPS Torah commentary notices this, and he asks, it is inconceivable that Jacob has 12 sons and there would be only one granddaughter. Well, that's really impossible. So there must be some extraordinary reason for her being mentioned in this Torah portion as the only woman in this long genealogy. But how do we know? How can we learn more about Sarah bat Asher? The Torah doesn't tell us anything, so we have to turn to Midrash. And Midrash is this ancient Jewish art of interpretation. This is what happens when the rabbis, centuries after Torah was written, notice something and they don't get it and they need more information. So they ask, what does this mean? Is there something else that we might learn from this? And the Midrash sometimes explains law and sometimes it imagines the backstory. And this is how we can learn about Sarah bat Asher. So if we look at one of the Midrashim, in Sefer HaYashar, which is a medieval retelling of the biblical stories, we are hearing the story when Joseph's brothers are returning from Egypt back to Canaan. And they know that Joseph is alive, and they want to share this great information with their father, Jacob, who is very old, and who is also very sad that he lost Joseph. He thinks that Joseph is dead. So how do they do this? They meet Sarah bat Asher, and this is what happens in the story. They found Sarah bat Asher, a clever and musically gifted young woman, and they gave her a harp. Play for our father, they said, and sing to him gently that Joseph still lives. So she played before Jacob and softly sung, Joseph is alive. Joseph is ruler of Egypt. Joseph is not dead. She repeated the words gently over and over until Jacob could absorb their meaning. Then joy entered his heart. The Spirit of God rested upon him, and he believed her. And Jacob blessed Sarah, saying, my daughter, may death never prevail over you, for you have revived my spirit. So according to this Midrash, she is the bearer of good news. Not just a name in the list, but a woman who brings Jacob back to life with her words. In a way, she also has to do all the emotional labor for all these men, but we don't have to go there right now. What is her reward? She's blessed by Jacob, and as it says, may death never prevail over you. And in the tradition, it is really believed that she lived hundreds and hundreds of years. She was there when Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, and the tradition says that she died only in the 12th century in the Jewish community of Isfahan in Iran. And if we would ever be so lucky to get there, there is even a grave that we can visit that is apparently hers. So she lived centuries and centuries. So there is this another midrash about her from the Talmud. and we are back in Egypt. This is hundreds of years later after the episode with Joseph. And the Israelites are about to leave Egypt. But there was this promise that, Joseph, he died in Egypt, and he said, please bring my bones back to the promised land. Only then you can leave. What's the problem there? No man remembers where they are. So they go to ask a woman, where is this? So Moses asked Sarah, the only woman who is still there from the generation. And Moses said to her, do you know where Joseph is buried? And she said to him, the Egyptians placed him in an iron casket and cast it into the Nile, so its waters would be blessed. So Moses went to the Nile and said, Joseph, Joseph, the time has come. If you will show yourself good, if not, we are released from our oath. And immediately Joseph's casket floated to the surface, and the Israelites were able to take it and start their journey to the promised land. So the Torah gives us just a name, but it is the Midrash who gives voice to the name, who gives all the backstory. And through this voice, through the Midrash, this woman becomes a witness. She's a singer. She's a bearer of memory, a living thread connecting all these generations. In a way, she is opposite to the daughters of Zelophehad, because they stood up publicly, they made a claim, they changed the law, and their names were recorded forever with a bit of the story. Sarah doesn't fight in this way, but she remembers, and there is power in remembering. And maybe what ties all of this together is the power of names. The daughters of Zelophehad fight so that their father's name won't be erased. But in doing so, they make sure that their own names are also written into the Torah. Machla, Noah, Hogla, Milcah, and Tirza. And we name them every year, and we remember. And Sarah is just this one name on the long list, without the story, without any title, but the name is, in a way, enough to open our memory. And Cosbi Batsur, the foreign woman, the Midianite woman who gets killed. Names matter. In Jewish tradition, names are not just labels. They are vessels for our souls. They carry stories, our character, our legacy. And sometimes all that remains is a name. And I'd like to conclude with a poem by the Israeli national poet, Zelda. It's called Each of Us Has a Name. Each of us has a name given by God and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by our sins and given by our longing. Each of us has a name given by our enemies and given by our love. Each of us has a name given by our celebrations and given by our work. Each of us has a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death. Shabbat shalom.